konyine duhereye umuntu yo kwama yibaza Justin, Dr Justin ninde? Dr Justin yiziki wabaye dokteri bigenze bite?
Dr Justin cyangwa se Dr Nsenga Justin ni umuntu usanzwe, ndasanzwe meze nk'abandi, ntacyo nagezeho abandi batashobora kugeraho, kandi naje ndacishakisha, ntabwo ndageraho nshaka kugera. Mu magambo make amateka yanjye ni nk'ay'abantu bose. Navukiye muri Congo, navukiye ahantu bita Irundi mu Minembwe, mpava ndi umwana muto twimukira mu Yogobogo, niho nakuriye ubuzima bwanje bwose, niho nabugiriye. Niho nigiye amashuri abanza ndetse na secondaire cyangwa se amashuri yisumbuye nyarangiriza mu Rwanda. Niga kuri kaminuza y'u Rwanda, niho niga itangazamakuru ndetse ndanarikora mu Rwanda imyaka igera kuri hafi 5. Nza muri Amerika, nari mfite diplome ya licence muri journalism. Ngeze n'ahangaha numva nshaka gukomeza kwiga, nize muri university muri New Hampshire yitwa Southern New Hampshire University, iri muri Manchester. Niho nakuye diplome ya masters. Ngeze ino narahinduye, sinabaye ngisubira mu itangazamakuru nubwo narikundaga cyane, ariko nakoze ibindi, numvise nshaka kwiga ibintu bijyanye n'indwara zo mu mutwe cyangwa se icyo twita mental health. Nacize muri iyo university muri New Hampshire, niga icyo bita community mental health na counseling. Ngira masters, then naje kwiga nyuma nja muri PhD. Nanone PhD yanjye nshaka gukomeza muri bya bintu, ni muri psychology, ariko ngira ni specialize cyane mu bintu bijanye na trauma cyangwa se ihungabana no gutabara abantu bari mu biza cyangwa se icyo twita disaster relief. No kuvuga ko ubumenyi bwanjye cyangwa ubushakashatsi nabukoze cyane cyane igitabo cyane nacanditse kuri trauma. N'ubu utakimbajijeho nanditse cyangwa se nakoze ubushakashatsi bureba ukuntu trauma cyangwa se ihungabana ryandukira ku muntu utarigeze abaho ihungabana ryabereye cyangwa se intambara yabereye, uko yandukirwa na rya hungabana rya wa muntu wabaye victime cyangwa se wanyuze mu mateka y'intambara. Nakoze ubushakashatsi bwo kureba abantu bari muri abaganga bavura impunzi hano muri Amerika, abantu bakorana n'impunzi, ariko cyane cyane muri secteur y'ubuzima, ni gute trauma y'abari abantu, ihungabana ry'abari abantu bafasha b'impunzi rishobora kubandukira. Iyo ukora ubushakashatsi hari icyo twita hypothèse, uba uvuga ati ni ikintu ugiye gukora kugira ngo uzamenye ko bibaho cyangwa bitabaho. Icyo na ubushakashatsi bwanje bwagezeho nuko twasanze ko ihungabana ryandukira riva mu bantu bumvise amakuru y'uwahungabanye nabo rikaba ryabafata. Naganiriye n'abaganga, naganiriye n'abadokiteri, naganiriye n'abantu benshi batandukanye bakorana n'impunzi, bambwira ko ubushakashatsi bwanze busanga abo bantu nabo ryahungabana ribagiraho impact ukuntu, bariko kubera ko ino bazi kwivura no kubasha kwiyitaho bararirwanya, ariko ihungabana rirandukira. Nizo nakoze ubushakashatsi. Ubundi ndi umugabo, mfite abana 3, abahungu 2 n'umukobwa. Ngira ngo nibyo, uwo niwe njewe, ndi umuntu usanzwe. Uyu munsi ndagira ngo mbanze nshimire ubuyobozi bw'amahoro kuba bwaradusabye cyangwa se bukadutumira kugira ngo tuze kuba muri uyu munsi. Nubwo turi abayoboke b'amahoro twari kuza tukabana n'abandi, ariko kuba mwaradusabye kuza tukagira icyo dufasha
cyangwa se tuganira, turabibashimiye. Icyongeyeho ndashimira abantu bose ko mwaje mungana, ariko kandi nk'uko hambere babivuze nari nzi ko naniteze ko iyi sale tuza kuyuzura, ariko abaje ngira ngo abayobozi bacu b'amatorero bazi ko ubutumwa bwa Yesu bwajanywe n'abantu 12 gusa. So uwaje hano abaye umudisciple cyangwa umwigisha byagera ku bantu benshi. Bansabye kuganira ku kibazo cy'ibiyobyabwenge cyangwa se ikibazo cy'indwara zo mu mutwe, cyane cyane mu rubyiruko. Sinzi nimba abashinzwe ibyuma baza kudufasha. Okay, good. Nabanje gushira aka gafoto, abantu bari hano muri kundagira slide bikavaho. Okay, good. Abantu bari hano muri 2004 igihe mahoro ishingwa nibashira amaboko hejuru. George ari hano, Pastor George. Hariho Pastor George, nabonye na Mama Anastasie. Hari undi muntu? Nanje wa gatatu. Iyi mahoro mubona ingana gutya dore aho yatangiriye. Umunsi tuyitangira harimo Honorable Nyarugabo, twaramutumye va muri Kongo araza. Ntabwo twari tuzi ko tuzagera. Iyo ngiye mu bintu by'amahoro nkabona abantu bangana gutya, nubwo bibera hanze y'igihugu cyacu, shima Imana ko dufite n'izo mbaraga zo kubasha gutekereza iwacu tungana gutya. Uriya munsi hano muri Amerika twese, n'abana n'abadamu n'umuntu waraye avutse, ntitwari turenze abantu 100. Ariko muzi uko tungana hano. Izo mbaraga rero ko zazamutse kandi mu gihe gito, tugomba kuzibyaza umusaruro, tutarebye kuri babandi bavuze ingunga bashaka kuduhagarika. Bariya mujye mubihorera, mukomeze mutera imbere. Reka ninjire muri subject. Ikibazo cy'uburwayi bwo mu mutwe mu mpunzi cyangwa se mu makominote y'impunzi kiri too general, ni kinini cyane. Nashatse kugira ngo noneho ndeke kubiganira nk'uko nsanzwe mbikora, tubimanure tuvuge ikibazo kiri mu rubyiruko rwacu. Umwaka ushize turi mu kwibuka naganire kuri ibi bintu, kandi nari kumwe na Presidente n'ubuyobozi turabiganira. Ndangije ikiganiro, mu mezi 2 yakurikiye nabonye amatelefone ndashobora gusobanura uko yanganaga. Abantu bari hano abakurikiye kuri YouTube no muri Afurika bose bambwira ngo wadufasha gute. Hari n'abantu baje kunshaka ndi muri Afurika ngo tubonane, umuntu yambwira ikibazo cye nkumva ni umuntu urwaye wabuze umufasha. Ariko uyu munsi wa none nashatse kugira ngo ikibazo bampaye isaha yo kuvuga, ariko ndavuga iminota 30, nimba nabishira mu minota 30, ahasigaye tuje inama, kuko ntituzahora tuvuga ikintu tudakora. Guhora tuvuga nta action tubishiramo biba bya bindi, kandi nta consequence tugakomeza kuzibona cyangwa se ingaruka tuzibona. Nagize ngo mumfashe, twigishwa ko iyo ugeze mu rwego rwa PhD tuvuga ibintu bidafite ubushakashatsi. Kandi none sinjya mu bushakashatsi kuko narabukoze. Abashaka igitabo nazakibatiza cyangwa se nkakibaha mukagisoma, ariko nagize ngo dukore ubushakashatsi bwihuse cyane muze kubona ibisubizo mwihereza mwenyine. Ndagira ngo abantu babe honest, muzajye mushira ukuboko hejuru aje gusobanura. Okay, thank you. Nabishize mu rurimi rw'amahanga ariko nkavuga ngo kubivuga abantu bumva niwo uravuga
urubyiruko ruri hano kandi ni topic yabo.
Wowe tuvugira mu Cyongereza. Ndagira ngo dukore agasave kagufi cyane karadufata iminota 2.
We're going to have a quick survey. It's going to take us 2 minutes.
Ndashaka ngo mushira amaboko hejuru nimbuzi umuntu.
I want you to raise your hand if you know someone.
Nibuzi umuntu ukoresha ibiyobyabwenge.
If you know someone that uses drugs.
Muri community zacu.
In our community, if you know someone that uses drugs, please raise your hand.
Okay, ikibazo cya kabiri. Please munyumve.
Please, let's follow.
Nimbuzi umuntu muri community yacu warashwe akagira Imana agasurvivinga cyangwa agapfa azize ko yari mu biyobyabwenge mu buryo bumwe cyangwa se ubundi shira ukuboko hejuru.
Number 2, if you know someone in our community that was shot, either died or survived because of the drug use, please raise your hand.
Mushira amaboko hejuru. Murakoze. Icya gatatu. Nibuzi umwe mu rubyiruko rwacu cyangwa se yaba ari n'umugabo wabuze akazi cyangwa se watakaje akazi ke kubera ibiyobyabwenge cyangwa se kunywa inzoga nyinshi akageraho bamwirukana mu kazi ubu akaba nta kazi afite cyangwa yarigeze kubura akazi sometime.
Third question, if you know someone in our community that lost a job or cannot attend to a job because of drug use, please raise your hand.
Nibuzi ko hari umuntu cyangwa se wagiye muri prison kubera ibiyobyabwenge.
If you know someone who's in jail because of drug use, please raise your hand.
Nibuzi ko hari umuntu ufite restraining order cyangwa se babujije kwegera umuryango we kubera violence cyangwa ibiyobyabwenge cyangwa inzoga nyinshi ukuboko hejuru.
Please raise your hand if you know someone who's on restraining orders who cannot approach their family because of drug use.
Nibuzi umuntu license yiwe bayihagaritse kubera ibiyobyabwenge.
If you know someone whose driving license was suspended because of drug use, please raise your hand.
Nibuzi umuntu wakoze accident kubera ko yasinze cyangwa yamyoye ibiyobyabwenge.
If you know anyone in our community that was in driving under the influence, please raise your hand.
Cyanyuma nimbuzi umuntu wavuye mu ishuri cyangwa se urimo gustrugglinga mu ishuri.
If you know someone who dropped off from school or left or is struggling in school.
Ubushakashatsi bwerekanye ko nje wari ko bareba hano 90%.
So as I was looking at you, 90%.
Bira bintu byose barabibona.
As I'm looking, 90% of all of you have seen this within our community.
Rero iyi presentation yanje ko nayise impuruza. A wake up call.
Oh, okay. So my presentation is really a wake up call. We are under threat?
Yeah, yes.
We are under threat.
Genocide turimo kureba genocide ikorerwa iwacu ntitukumve ijambo genocide kariya kanyuma side ni imbuto irimo gushira tureba.
As we talk about the word genocide, the very last word is seed. It means there's a seed that is basically being extinct.
Mureke mbereke imibare mike yakozwe hari abantu bake twaganiriye tugerageza guhuza imibare hano muri Amerika na Canada no mu Burayi.
I would like to show you numbers or statistics that I talked with few people here. So the statistic was done here in the United States, Canada and Europe.
Tumaze kubura abantu 22.
We've lost 22 people.
Bapfuye mu buryo bumwe cyangwa ubundi ariko buhuje ku biyobyabwenge cyangwa se inzoga.
Who died in many different ways but was related really to drug use.
Imibare ntabwo ari numbers gusa ntabwo ari imibare ubu n'ubuzima bw'abana bacu.
So these numbers are not just numbers, these are lives of people.
aba ni abakobwa bacu, ni abahungu bacu, ni barumuna bacu, ni bakuru bacu.
These are relatives, cousins, sisters, brothers.
Nagerageje kureba muri Amerika hari uwigeze kuvuga hano ko ari icyorezo ibo bakimenye mbere bafata ingamba.
Here in the States, opioid use or drug use has been already classified as a epidemic.
Mwaka w'ibihumbi 2019 hapfuye abantu barenga 50,000 bishwe na overdose cyangwa se kunywa ibiyobyabwenge birenze umuntu agapfa.
In 2019, there were over 50,000 people who died from opioid use here in the States.
Bari urubyiruko ruri hagati y'imyaka 25 kugeza kuri 34.
And it was a youth between 25 to 34 years old, male mostly.
So, niki gitera ibyo bintu?
What's causing this?
Reka mpere kuri trauma.
Let me start with the trauma.
Apotre yabivuze.
Apostle said it.
Ngira nicyo gituma bazanye ikiganiro canje nyuma y'iki kugira ngo twunganirane.
This is why they probably put me behind him so that it becomes a continuation.
Yavuze rwose rwo kuva mu minembwe tukirukanwa tukaja mu nkambi tukagera mu gatumba njambwira abantu.
So the journey coming from the DRC going into refugee camps all the way here.
Ntabwo turi ibiti biriya bintu biracyaturimo.
I always tell people that we're not trees. These things has affected us. They're still in us.
Nje mfite ikibazo ngira ngo Bibiliya ni bivuga ngo ubwenge bwinshi butera umuruho. Umuruho kumenya ibintu ukabona abandi bantu ni nkaho batabizi ndababara mutima.
Sometimes knowing so many things, it causes you to feel fatigue.
Iyo ngeze mu rusengero cyangwa se mu mbare ya pastor ndakomeza mvuga.
When I arrive in the church and I'm going to excuse myself from the pastors.
Nkabona mukutano iminsi ibiri abayumbe.
And I see 2 days gathering for the bayumbe.
Tugasimbuka from Friday kugeza kuwa gatanu.
We jump or gusirimba from Friday to Sunday.
And
no one is talking about drug use in our families. They don't even pray for it. My heart is sudden.
So, trauma uko ifata ndabinyuramo gato cyane kuko ni isomo rirerire mu mbabarire.
So trauma is a very long lesson, but I'm going to talk about quickly of how it happens.
Biriya bintu byose twanyuzemo aho wanyuze hose ugahura n'ikibazo nariya apotre yavuze ko yagize ikibazo ari kuri immigration hano bimwibutsa ko yagahagara ku mabariyeri iriya ni trauma.
Anytime you go through a problem, and the way Apostle said that he had a PTSD or traumatic event when he would approach a border post.
Flashback.
So that was, we call that a flashback.
Flashback, Nick.
Flashback, what is a flashback? It's something that comes and it triggers you to remember something you saw in Gatumba massacre.
Kurugero nk'amafoto yerekanye hari umuntu ushobora kuba ari hano yaracitse kwicumu mu Gatumba iriya foto igahita imugarura akumva na smell ya matente yari mwashe.
For example, he showed some pictures from the Gatumba massacre. Some people may see that picture and it brings them back exactly to that moment, and they can even smell how it was. So everything that happened in Gatumba, it's being stored somewhere in our brain. What happened when people were being forced to flee from Uvira? It didn't go anywhere. It's still in our brains. If you have something that really triggers you, everything comes right back like live. Even the smell, but it comes back.
Umuntu wagize accident y'imodoka ikamuhiraho akumva essence irimo gusha.
If you had a car accident and you can smell the gas,
nyuma y'imyaka 20
after 20 years,
ataravuwe,
if you didn't get treatment,
yanyuze ku muhanda akabona imodoka iri gusha yumva yasme ari mu modoka yifunze arayumva.
if they're just driving on the road and they see a car burning, they smell back
nagerageje kubereka
the gas.
iriya ni CT scan y'ubwonko bw'umuntu. Igice cya hano kiri cyitwa nomo ni kuri ubwonko bwacu buba bugomba kumera.
Okay, so the right side that says normal, that's how our brain should be.
Ibi bice mubona by'umutuku,
The red dots,
brain iri healthy.
it's a healthy brain.
Ni brain ifite ubuzima bwiza, ubwonko bufite ubuzima bwiza.
It's a healthy brain tissue.
Iyi foto ni y'umwana wagize trauma, wagize abuse mu muryango.
This CT scan is a CT scan of a child that was abused.
Hano hariya hirya murabona ko harimo amazone menshi ari dark.
And the other side, you see many black spots in the CT scan.
Aha, iyi ni trauma yamaze ubwonko, ni trauma hinduye ubwonko.
So the black spots that you're seeing is the trauma that has affected the brain.
Ubwonko bwahindutse.
So that brain has changed.
Ntabwo bushobora gukora nk'ubwonko butarahinduka.
So the brain that has changed cannot function the way the brain works.
Uturemangingo twa buriya bwonko twangiritse.
So there are some brain tissues that really have been damaged.
Ariko hari uko dushobora kuvura.
But there are ways to repair them.
Ariko ni kuriya ubwonko bwo trauma ihindura ubwonko bw'umuntu.
But that's how trauma changes our brain tissues.
None hari ubushakashatsi bwakozwe vuba.
So there's a recent research.
Ndaza kubibereka.
I'm going to show it to you.
Ubushakashatsi bwakozwe harimo n'umwana w'umunyarwandakazi w'umusakatrist.
It's also there's a Rwandese lady that's a psychiatrist.
Ababishaka nawohereza akaga slide.
I'm happy to show the slides.
Trauma itakiri kuri iriya level y'ubwonko gusa, noneho yageze no mu majene, sinzi gene twazita mu rurimi rwacu, ariko n'uturemangingo tugize umuntu wari we nawe azamukomokaho.
So yabaye karande.
Yes.
Okay. So the research that was done by Rwandese psychiatrists has shown that the trauma is not only in our brain, but it also has gone into our genes.
It's intergenerational transfer of the trauma.
It's being transferred from generation to the other. What does this mean?
Biriya bintu tubona byo kwicwa, byo kugirirwa nabi.
When we see violence and discrimination,
bikinjira no muri biological uko imibiri yacu iteye na twa turemangingo.
So it enters in our DNA.
Ku buryo umwana uzabyara azavukana ya trauma.
In a way that even when you birth a child, it will come with the trauma.
Nuko nicarana bande bakavuga ngo turabona usa nabo kwa naka.
The way you see me and you say you look like you look familiar.
Ako kantu ka trauma nako kazajya kagenda kavuka muri abo bana.
So that type of trauma also transfer itself into the next generation.
Ni ampuruzi.
So really, the reason why I'm saying this is because there is a wake-up call.
Ubushakashatsi nakoze muri PhD imyaka 4.
My research for my PhD
yerekanye ko abazungu
4 years, it shows that the white people,
b'Abanyamerika,
the American,
bafashe impunzi nkatwe twese twahuye n'ibibazo.
The American people who help refugees,
tubanduza trauma yacu.
We have transferred our trauma back to them.
Trauma rero ni indwara nka malaria.
So trauma, consider trauma as an illness like malaria. The way a mosquito bites you, it can bite you and then you can transfer back to another person.
Impamvu zindi zituma nari mvuze ku buryo bwa trauma, impamvu zituma abana bacu baja mu biyobyabwenge ni trauma ishobora kuba iva mu babyeyi, ubu nyine turebera mu bantu none tukavuga ngo abana batunaniye ariko ituva mu twebwe.
So really the other cause of trauma is that trauma that comes from the parents but then it transferred to the kids and we think that there is something wrong with the kids but it really came from the parents.
Hari abana batabaye mu Gatumba, bavutse nyuma Gatumba.
There are kids who are not in Gatumba.
Ariko kubera ko wa mwana arerwa n'umubyeyi traumatized.
But because the kid is being raised by a traumatized parent.
Tubahereza nta kindi tubaha icyo dufite.
So that we're giving them what we have.
izindi mpamvu hariho impamvu nise intano ziturimo twenyine n'iziri hanze.
So there are other causes that are internal and external.
Reka manze vuga iziturimo apotre yabivuze.
So let me talk about the internal ones that Apostle shared.
Mwa miryango mwe b'Abanyamulenge muri hano.
Dear families of Banyamulenge that are here.
Impuruza naje kuvuga none ni kubaha ubutumwa buvuga ngo
The wake up call that I bring today says
ibiyobyabwenge tubona mu bana bacu ni indwara.
The drug use that we see in our children is an illness.
Nitureke kwihishira.
Let's not hide it.
Nitureke guhishira ibibazo dufite.
Let's not hide the problems that we
Nitureke
have.
kujugunya abana.
Let's not abandon our children.
Muri za mvugo zacu tugira nk'umwana yatunaniye.
Let's not use the words that we use to use
Dufite stigma
that
yuko
the kids are
niba mbonye umwana
are
wanjye
difficult.
afite sinyi zo yitwara.
Let's not stigmatize our kids. If we see a sign that a child is not behaving,
tubigira shame, tukabigira isoni mu muryango.
we shame them, and it becomes a shame to the family.
Tukabigira kirazira.
And we don't talk about it.
Ariko umwana yarwara asima ukavugira abandi umwana arwaye asima.
But when your child is sick with asthma, you're free to tell other people that your child has asthma.
Uko twigiza abana bacu, uko tubwira abana, ubwo tustigmatiza abana bacu, niko tubapushinga tubajana.
The more we push away our children, the more we stigmatize them, the more we push them away.
Kandi wa mwana iyo umubyeyi yamwigije hanze,
when the child is feeling pushed or disconnected from the family,
umuhanda bakamwegereza.
He meets with other friends and they welcome him.
Dufite pressure mu mafamiye.
We have so much pressure in our families.
Hari ababivuze hano, Mshindaji yabivuze.
Most previous speakers touched on that.
Dufite ababyeyi bafata amadeni ngo mufite abana bazayanyishurira.
There are parents who take loans and they put it on the kids.
Abunzi bakuye abana babo ku ishuri ngo babafashe kwishura mortgage.
There are parents that I know that who have taken the kids from school and have asked them to work so they can pay for their bills.
Ngo dore uko ameze. Umuntu ubona umwana wa naka twazanye hano ngo dore yarangije amashuri.
So they compare their children to the other children and they put so much pressure. And they use the other kids as example.
Kundatanga ni example ntambuka vuba imvugo tuvuga turazizi.
I'm using the general terms that the Banyamulenge family or parents use to their kids.
Hari izindi mpamvu zituma abana baja mu biyobyabwenge ariko zimwe nyinshi ziva mu miryango yacu.
Even though there are many other causes that may cause our children to use drugs, but there are causes that come from within us.
Hariho na disconnection. Abana bagera hano bakavuga ururimi vuba, ababyeyi ntibafite uburyo bwo kuruvuga.
There's also a disconnection between the parents and the children, mainly due to the language barrier, which faster. And parents go to work and they forget about children. In a nutshell, let's try to minimize the internal cause. Let's look within our families and say, how can I minimize these causes? For example, there are many families who do not even share dinner with their children. There are some families that have even 5 children, but when you enter, there's not even one child around. When you ask the parents, where are the kids? They say, oh, they're in their rooms. By the time they come down in the living room, they'll bring things that you will not know how to manage. Or sometimes they say, oh, they're already eaten. Or they would kick the kids out of the room. Go in your bedrooms. I have guests. You don't really know what they're watching in the rooms. We have a blessing to have beautiful houses that have stairs, but when you send your children upstairs, are you sure of what they are watching? So there are so many that we can say that comes from within. Let's talk about the external. Yes, let's talk about the external causes.
peer pressure, abana gushaka kuba nk'abandi. Ya integration Apotre yavuze ikarenga umwana agashaka kumera nk'abasanze hano.
So there's a lot of peer pressure within our children who wants to assimilate to the American culture.
Nashimye ko Apostle nabwiye Dr. Alex Yarati Apostle presentation yanje igeze hagati wagira ngo twari turi kumwe.
So Apostle really had touched on a lot of things that I was going to say. Zip code.
Icyo kintu kiza kindya mu mutwe nkumva narwaye isereri.
The issue of zip code zoning really bothers me.
Nigeze gukora ikiganiro n'umurageje Pense nimba nibuka mbwira abantu zip code icarico.
I've done some talks with Murage TV and I explain what it means to be in the zip code.
Zip code ari ya mibare 5 gusa.
Zip code is not just the numbers, the 5 numbers.
Ya mibare 5 mubona.
Those 5 numbers that you see.
Mbere yo kwinjira mu nzu iriya mibare 5 uzumenya ko ari ubuzima bwawe n'ubw'abana bawe n'abaza gukomokaho.
Before you get into a house, make sure you check the zip code and know that the future of your family and your children depends on that. There's someone that asked, how do we know good neighbors and bad neighbors? We are here with Afande Fidel. Before you rent an apartment, go to the police station. Go to the police station and ask for data for this apartment or the zip code. It's a public information. And the police loves it.
Twakira amakozi 200 ku kwezi y'abagore bahamagaye ko abana babo bafite imbunda aho hantu wajana bawe.
The police will tell you how many calls they have, like 911 calls they have received from that apartment.
Ico ni kimwe cya kabiri. Internet.
So Apostle really had touched on a lot of things that I was going to say. Zip code.
Ico kintu kiza kindya mu mutwe nkumva narwaye isereri.
The issue of zip code zoning really bothers me.
Nigeze gukora ikiganiro n'umurageje Pense nimba nibuka mbwira abantu zip code icarico.
I've done some talks with Murage TV and I explain what it means to be in the zip code.
Zip code ari ya mibare 5 gusa.
Zip code is not just the numbers, the 5 numbers.
Ya mibare 5 mubona.
Those 5 numbers that you see.
Mbere yo kwinjira mu nzu iriya mibare 5 uzumenya ko ari ubuzima bwawe n'ubw'abana bawe n'abaza gukomokaho.
Before you get into a house, make sure you check the zip code and know that the future of your family and your children depends on that. There's someone that asked, how do we know good neighbors and bad neighbors? We are here with Afande Fidel. Before you rent an apartment, go to the police station. Go to the police station and ask for data for this apartment or the zip code. It's a public information. And the police loves it.
Twakira amakozi 200 ku kwezi y'abagore bahamagaye ko abana babo bafite imbunda aho hantu wajana bawe.
The police will tell you how many calls they have, like 911 calls they have received from that apartment.
Ico ni kimwe cya kabiri.
Internet.
Ifite amakuru yose y'ahantu ushaka kuri.
If you search through internet, it will also give you good data.
Icya gatatu.
Third.
Mbere yo kuja muri apartment muzabanza ugende mbere yo kuja kwaplika uzabanza uzenguruke n'imodoka yawe.
Before you apply into that neighborhood, take a car and drive around and check it out.
Hanze nibo baturanyi bawe.
The people you will see in the neighborhood, those will be your neighbors.
Niwinjira muri neighborhood,
if you enter in any neighborhood,
niwinjira muri neighborhood ugasanga abantu bafunguye amamodoka ko ni nka garage karakorera imodoka ku muhanda. uzasubireyo. Icyo ni kimwe kikwereka ko neighborhood y'abantu ari mbi.
If you enter in a neighborhood and you find people fixing their cars as if they're on the street, just turn around.
Ako nkavuga iki, ba nyiri ma apartment,
the owners of those apartments,
bazima ntibashobora kwemera ko ufungura imodoka ngo amavuta agwe mu muhanda habe mu mwanda.
The owners of the apartment will not allow for you to open a car and start fixing it so the oil or the gas can...
Ugasanga umugabo ungana nanje yambaye isengere ku manywa yicaye imbere y'inzu karamu itabi cyangwa afite inzoga saa 3 za mu gitondo, uzahazana abana bawushakira.
If you go in a neighborhood and you find a man like of his age in a t-shirt and smoking, what are you looking to bring your children to?
Nujira muri neighborhood ukumva harimo muzika ukagira ngo nje muri hari akabari kabaga Buvira ngo ni Mbariso, abana bawuza bajanye ugiye kubaka.
If you enter in a neighborhood and there is a car that is blasting music, please don't take your children there. So pay attention to the zip code.
Hari ikintu ngiye kuvuga abantu bambabarire.
There's something I would like to say, and please forgive me.
Nzi ko tuza hano abantu batishoboye hari ababa mu mazu ya leta.
And I know when we come here, there are people who are low income and some people use the government assistance.
Hari icyo bita Jim Crow law, abantu babizi. Hari itegeko ryo muri za 60 ryashizeho hari amazoning, baza gushira hari amazu ya leta kugira ngo babuze imiryango kuba homeless ariko babashire mu buzima. Bagire gusa roof igisenge ariko ibindi bibe.
There is a government law called Jim Crow law that was put in place many years ago to prevent homelessness, and they put houses where people can just leave, but they're really, everything else doesn't really matter.
Uzano muri Amerika bakaguha inzu ya leta uzayijemo ariko wumve kusa nuri mu nkambi ukore cyane vuba kugira ngo usohoke.
So when you first come to America and you're given a government assistance or like a house for the government's assistance, work hard and move out fast.
Kuko abanyamurenge ikintu tuzi hano muri Amerika tuzi gukora.
As abanyamurenge, we're not lazy, we work hard.
Inzu bazaguha ibyumba 3-4 bakakubwira muzajya wishura amadolari 10 ngo cyangwa utayabona ngo ureke uzayihunge please. Amadolari 10. Inzu bakakubwira ngo inzu ngo uzajya wishura amadolari 10 no mu yamazu ya leta siko bigenda. Barakubwira ngo wakwishura ngo $10 ngo cyangwa nima ntayibonye ngo nta kibazo.
If you are given a really cheap house and they tell you to pay $10, if you have it you pay, if you don't, that house really
inzu y'amadolari munyumve ntabwo nabuze mu mbabarire uri mu nzu ya leta nyumve ndimo kuvuga reality ntabwo ari wende kuvuga.
Those who are using the government houses, please pay attention. I'm not saying names.
Inzu ya leta urimo y'amadolari 10 mugenzi wawe arimo yishura amadolari 500 niba nta bundi bushobozi ufite nta kundi wabigenza ariko ufite ubushobozi bwo kuva aho hantu nyaboneka ntabwo ari kukugirira neza aho hantu.
If you are paying $10 and someone else is paying over $1,000, if you have no other means, that's okay. But if you have means to move out of that house, that is not for your good to stay in that house.
Hari abantu benshi hariho case njewe y'umuntu nagiye kureba ndamubwira.
There's a case that I know that I went and spoke to someone about that house situation.
Asigara abwira abantu ngo nguriya mugabo ngo ahantu satuye ngo nahaba ngo abantu barirata ndamubwira no. Aba bana nsanze hano hanze nasanze abana b'ubwoko bumwe ndashaka kuvuga ndamubwira ntabandi bo bazaba abakwe bawe n'abakazana bawe.
When I spoke to that man, he felt that the other places were too expensive, and I tried to convince him, and I showed him that the kids that were around, and I said, these will be your son-in-law or your daughter-in-law. After 5 years,
that's
what happened.
Yagiye gusohoka aho ngaho ngo aguriza ahandi hamaze kugira damage zitagira uko zingana ntavugira.
By the time he was buying a house somewhere else, the damage was already done.
Zip code twayivugaho tugatinda, ariko hariho social media nayo irimo kutwikira abantu.
So I can talk about zip coding, but now next thing is the social media.
Hari ababyeyi bareresha abana amatelefone.
There are parents that are using telephone to
twese abana bacu barayafite, ariko umwana bafite telefone ku myaka ingahe arayikoresha?
So we all have, all our kids have phones.
Iyo umwana w'imyaka 14 umugore iPhone akayirarana mu cyumba cye, uri umubyeyi uzi icyo cyumba nikakora niyo telefone.
So when you give a 14-year-old a phone and you let them sleep with it, what do you know? What do you think they're using the phone for?
bwerekanye ibintu bibiri biteye ubwoba hano muri Amerika biri mu kuba.
The research showed two things that are so scary.
Abana batangira kugerageza ibiyobyabwenge bafite imyaka 14 bari muri middle school.
So children are starting to try the drugs at the age of 14 when they're in middle school.
Abo bana nanone muri statistique z'abana bashaka kwiyahura abenshi ubu nyine hariho icyorezo cya social media cyo kohereza abana ama message yo kubabwira ngo nibiyahure.
There is another messages that are being sent out to kids' phones to tell them to commit suicide.
Hari umuntu muri community zacu duherutse kuvugana afite umwana w'imyaka 12 cyangwa 11.
There's someone in our community that I spoke to has a teen.
Yegera ababyeyi arabwira ati you know what, ati ndashaka kwiyahura.
The child went to school and came back, told their parents that they want to commit suicide.
Zagenze gute? Ngo afite depression.
And the parents was like, what's going on? The child said, I feel depressed.
Twibwira ko abana bacu ari impinja, ariko abana bari muri iyi si bari exposed ku bintu biteye ubwoba tutazi.
We think that children are still little, but they're exposed to so many scary and dangerous things that we don't even know.
Ubu nyine hari igitabo dukoresha ni nka Bibiliya y'abantu bavura indwara zo mu mutwe igira classification y'indwara zose cyitwa DSM-5.
There's a book that psychologists used called DSM-5 that has all the classification of mental illnesses.
Kwinjiza ibintu by'ama electronics mu ndwara muco bita ngo ni gaming disorder condition.
Now there is another diagnosis that's going to enter in this book that's called gaming disorder.
Gaming disorder condition.
Gaming disorder condition.
Ibindi bitera abana bacu kuja mu biyobyabwenge dufite pressure y'ubuzima.
And the other thing is that our children have pressure, life pressure.
Abana bari mu mashuri sinzi wabivuze kare akazararengeje imyaka yagera hano ari umwana ushaka kwiga yagera mu mashuri bikamunanira akabura support, agahera muri famille abura support, akagera hanze muri community akabura support, mu rusengero akabura support, umwana akiheba.
So there are other children that come here who start school, and then when they get in school and they have some challenge learning fast, they lose support from their family. They don't have support in their family, in the church, and also in the community. They lose hope and they just give up. When they fail one time, their parents would joke about it, or you're a failure, you failed, just go to men and find a job.
Ngora muri men hari abana baza nkamureba kavuga ngo uyu mwana avuye iwabo sinzi state avuyemo cyangwa se nabonye imodoka nkamureba mu maso ye ukabona umwana afite nk'ibiro 5 z'urumogi mu mutwe.
I work in Maine. I see a lot of young people who come to work. I look at them. I don't even know where they come from, and I can see just in their face, and I can tell they have about 5 pounds of drugs in their head.
Muri Maine umwana mukore 5,000 agasa n'umwikuye ngo genda ja muri Maine ja Arizona ja hahandi ariko umwana wamureba mu maso ukabona n'umurwayi wohereje kuja gukora.
When a child starts making $5,000 a month, the parents are so quick to push them away. But when you look at them, they're so sick and struggling.
ni gute abana batangira donc ibiyobyabwenge ni indwara y'ubwonko tugomba kumenya uwo mwana ararwaye ntumufata ngo umwohereze ahantu banza umufashe akire abone kuja mu buzima busanzwe.
So we have to understand that the drug use is really a mental illness. If your child is sick, you don't send them away. You have to care for them first before you send them away.
batangira kuja mu biyobyabwenge.
How do they even start?
Level ya mbere bayitangira ari experimental kugera gupima.
So they start off by experimenting.
Iyo experience cyangwa se ku-experimenting abifashwa n'inshuti ziwe.
The experimentation process starts with just trying out with friends.
Wohereza abana muri birthday y'umuntu utazi n'igihe yavukiye n'ababyeyi biwe uzi ngo abana bawe barakora iki.
It starts off by you sending your children off to a birthday of their friends that don't even know.
Daddy ngo ngiye ngo muri birthday ngo y'umuntu ngo inshuti yanje. Okay.
Your child comes and say, Daddy, I'm going to my friend's birthday that you don't even know. And then you say, okay, go. Do you take your child, drive him to his friends, look around and see what kind of friends he's going to be around, and then know where you leave your child? And then there's another thing called a sleepover. Parents, you take your child and you send them off to go have a sleepover to someone that you don't play with. You didn't come from the same village, you don't share the same values. You don't even know how their friends conduct themselves and you just let them go. What they're going to bring back, you're going to use two hands. I am challenging parents.
Sleep over. Nimba nje mfite abana bakuru bunyine ariko nabipfuye ngira umukobwa umwe twigeze kubipfa ndamubwira ngo mbere yo kuja gusleepinga over zoza mbanza mbonane n'uwo muntu tuganire nawe numva ko ari abana be. Sinshobora kukwemerera.
I have one daughter and I've had some fights with him, and I said, before I let you go have a sleepover, I'm going to have to meet with the parents and see and talk to them and see how they raise their children.
You know what, my dad was too African.
So my daughter was used to it, and at some point, my daughter got used to it, and she would tell her friends that my dad is too African, I can't come.
This is a trauma.
Did you see how we were startled? Some of us remember the gunshots that we heard.
Ibya kabiri iyo umwana avuye muri bijya byo ku experimenting aramanone agakorora akagira gute ejo akavuga ati uziko nakoroye ariko numva ndi hayi bazita no kuba hayi no kuja hejuru akumva ari ahantu hanejeje yasinze.
After experimenting they cough a little bit and then after that they're like, okay, I cough but I feel high, I feel good.
Nuko abana bacu agatangira akadoze gato none ejo bakamubwira ati ukozeho akageraho none haje muri addiction ubwonko bukarwara indwara ikamufata.
It started off by just a low dose and then you continue into becoming addicted.
Level ya gatatu n'igihe iyo bavuga addiction ubwiye no muri dictionary ukareba bavuga ko ari indwara y'ubwonko ico gihe ubwonko bwarwaye imbaraga z'umuntu z'umubiri we ziba zashize none hagakoreshwa n'ibiyobyabwenge.
Once the addiction really means that our body starts to just being used by the drugs. When you don't get the drugs, when the child doesn't get the drugs, they can't even leave the house.
No kubivamo iyo ufashe umuntu kuva mu biyobyabwenge ngira ngo nsaba abantu bacu please umuntu nimba ari mu kiyobyabwenge akakubwira ngo ndashaka kubivamo ntukambwira ngo hagarika none no abagiye gupfa. Iyo uhagaritse ni kuvuga ngo hagaritse ikintu cyari gifashe umubiri we gufunctioning uko ubigenza ugomba kubona n'umuganga agatangira kumuha doze nkeya igenda iramplasa bya biyobyabwenge kugeza igihe bizavira mu mubiri.
So when you make a decision to leave drug use, it's not advisable to just tell them to stop.
So nuba umwana wawe afite behavior zitandukanye, aje mu rugo atinze biruta uko byari bimeze, atangiye kuvuga uko atavugaga, hari ibimenyetso byinshi nk'umubyeyi ugize attention wabona ko umwana wawe ari guhinduka.
There are so many signs that can show that your child is changing. If they're coming home late, they're talking the way they don't usually talk. There's so many ways you can figure out that your child is changing, and you can start to approach them.
inshuti zipapinga wakajya wumva abantu barakomanza wareba iyo shusho ukabona ntawe wabonye umurenge.
And when you see friends just popping up and you don't even know their faces,
ukingurira umwana ngo ngaho genda,
and you open the door and you just let the child go.
Intergenerational trauma twayivuze uko abantu ba trauma igenda ija mu rubyaro.
We talked about intergenerational trauma.
So ibi byose byikubise ku mwana,
So when all these things fall on the child,
agomba kubona voie de sortie, agomba kubona ko escapinga aya pressure yose amuri.
there has to be a way to escape the pressures.
Aja mu nzoga ku escapinga PTSD ariyo trauma cyangwa anxiety cyangwa akazi cyangwa responsibility mwamuhaye cyangwa ibindi bintu byose bimugoye, akaja gushaka igituma byibuza asinzira.
So when the child has PTSD, anxiety, work pressure, school pressure, relationships, they find other ways to escape all that anxiety.
Agakote hano bavuze ngo ntabwo ari urumogi cyangwa se ma drugs atuma umuntu aba umu-addict, ahubwo nuko aba ashaka guhunga reality, nuko aba ashaka guhunga ibimureba biri aho ngaho bigaragara byamunaniye.
So there is a quote over there that says it's not the drugs that make a drug addict. It's the need to escape reality.
Okay, niki twakora
What can we do
k'imiryango?
as families?
Nidufate iya mbere dufasha abana bacu,
We need to take the first step to help our children.
duhagarike stigma, duhagarike ibintu bya kirazira yo kumva ko tutavuga ibibazo biri mu
We
miryango
need to
yacu.
stop stigmatizing drug addiction.
Tureke gukora communication ijudging abana bacu.
Let's not judge our
Ararwaye
children.
umwana, please dufashe.
Let's help our children.
Nko gusanga umuntu wagonzwe n'imodoka ugatangira kumuseka,
When you find them in a car crash and you start to laugh at them.
duhindure mentalite yacu.
Let's change our mentality.
Umwana wa naka urabizi yarananiranye,
And you start to talk about other kids,
umwana yabaye kirara,
and you say
wa mwana turamwigezayo.
they become difficult and you're pushing them away.
Tube involved mu buzima bw'abana bacu bakiri batoya.
Let's get involved in the lives of our children since they're little. Know where their children go.
Abo bari kumwe,
Know who they are with.
uwo mubyeyi ukaze ejo bizaguha.
Sometimes you may need to be a strict parent.
N'ubuzima bwa nubwo bwatugora ariko tuba ababyeyi tugerageze gutanga umwanya wo kubana n'abana.
Let's try to make time for our children. Mahoro,
kominote zacu,
our community,
amatorero,
our churches,
nyabuneka.
please.
Hari umuntu wavuze ngo ubuzima bwiza mu mubiri mwiza. A good soul in a good body. Bivuze ngo Imana twigisha,
The God that we teaches,
igomba kuza mu mubiri mwiza.
He needs to come into a beautiful soul.
Amatorero niyo point y'aba leaders tugira muri community zacu.
Churches, that's those are the leadership we have. Please stand up.
Tugabanye igisirimba.
Let's minimize the gisirimba.
Tuvura abana barwaye.
Let's care for our children who are sick.
Tugabanye ibintu cyane, mvuze ngo tugabanye iby'umwuka mantera amabuye, tugabanye ibintu biri spiritual tuje mu buzima busanzwe, tubwira abana Imana iri mu buzima busanzwe.
Let's reduce the spiritual activities and talk about reality.
Nimureke mu nyigisho zacu tuje tugira social teaching.
Let's teach our kids about social things.
nimugire imishinga y'amatorero yita kuri iki kintu.
Let's have ministries within the church that
nimba hari ikintu leta yanishyiramo amafaranga menshi,
if there's one thing that the government of the US puts so much money in is really to
kuko abana bari
fight
mu
drug use.
biyobyabwenge ejo bazaja muri prison, kandi iyo Imana igiye muri prison leta imutanga amafaranga menshi ubuzima bwe bwose kurushayo bakamutanze kugira ngo akire.
This is because when children are into drugs, they end up in jail, and once they're in jail, the government spends so much money when they're in jail.
Mahoro nimureke tugire campaign.
So Mahoro, let's make a campaign.
The Save Mulenge campaign, tukoze abana bacu urubyiruko rwacu ko rurafatureka.
So like a Save Mulenge campaign, let's make a campaign because our children are dying and we're watching it.
Structure ya Mahoro mureke dushemo n'ikintu.
Within Mahoro structure, let's put a structure for mental
tureke
illness.
kwemera ngo byarabaye nyine byaje ngo tuzemere dukomeze dushingura ntabwo izo bintu mureke dushireho akacu.
Let's not accept that it has happened. Let's try
mu kurangiza
our best.
hari umuntu wavuze ngo our trouble is not ignorance but inaction, cyangwa se nimba nabisobanura ikibazo dufite si ukutamenya.
The problem we have, it's not being ignorant,
ahubwo ni uguceceka.
it's being silent.
iyi mpuruza ndabasaba ngo muyumve.
So the call to action, I really implore you to listen.
nyabuneka
Please,
ibiyobyabwenge ni indwara igiye kutumaraho.
mental health is a disease and it's going to kill us all. Let's defend ourselves.
turere abana bacu twirwaneho.
Let's care for children.
iyo concept tuyikure mu muzo twuko tuyumva.
Let's let's move the concept
mu ndege bazakubwira ngo nihaba impanuka mbere guha undi muntu mask banzo yishireho.
In the airplane, they tell you before you give someone else a mask, put it on yourself first.
mu bibazo tuza kubazwa ndarangije ntimumbaze ibibazo byinshi ahubwo mutanga ibitekerezo.
Before you ask me questions, please give
kandi
ideas
nje mumfashe
and help me.
ni umutwaro nikoreye nimukubura uko umukoresha kubera ko turazana tukavuga ngo ngo twafashijwe ngo cya kiganiro cyawe.
Save children, and we all should work hard to save at least one life.
si ikibazo cy'umuryango umwe.
And this is not a problem just for one family.
ikibazo cyacu twese.
It's a community level problem.
murakoze.
Thank you.